exchanges at stake in the way that these platforms are operated. We'll focus plenty more through the next hour on the court case now underway there in Oakland. Let's turn, in the meantime, though, to matters concerning Russia, who say the UK will face consequences for which it will have to answer after reports that Ukraine used British-made drones for its long-range strikes deep inside Russian territory. The drones were used to hit military, industrial and logistics targets, including a fuel depot in the Rostov region. The Russian embassy in London accused Britain of deliberately opting for escalation. The UK has pledged 150,000 drones to Ukraine by the end of this year, under a £750 million support package. The Prime Minister Andy Burnham said today the UK will continue to support Ukraine 100%. Let's get the thoughts of Lee Turner. He's the former UK ambassador to Ukraine and author of Lessons in Diplomacy, Politics, Power and Parties. Thank you very much for coming to the programme. Can you help us understand what we're supplying, what the purpose of what we're supplying is?
We haven't got the details of these weapons that the UK has been providing, but we do know that the UK has been providing drones to help the Ukrainians to take the fight to Russia. The key point here, though, Christian, is that there's no suggestion that these drones that the UK has provided are game changers. The overwhelming majority of Ukraine's attacks use homegrown weapons. We have the Flamingo cruise missile, and you may remember from last year Operation Spider's Web, when the Ukrainians sent drones in lorries to all parts of Russia to attack military aircraft. So the Russian reaction here and the threats they're making are not really about UK weapons at all. It's really because the war is going so badly for Russia that they're very sensitive about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, obviously we report on this quite a lot, and our point has always been that Ukraine have done a lot of this themselves and have developed technology at an extraordinary speed. The irony also, of course, which Russia doesn't point to, is that many Western products and parts find their way into Russian munitions.
They certainly do. There have been these efforts for the last 4 years plus, in fact, all the way back to the launch of the war back in 2014, to stop military technology finding its way into Russian hands. But it's very difficult to prevent components from doing so when the Russians are so desperate for them, and that continues to be a problem.
I know you're a very keen student of what goes on in Moscow as well, as was part of your job when you were there in Kyiv. We had an interview this morning on the BBC with Andrei Fedorov, the former Russian Deputy Foreign Minister, who was very clear that the threat is real. And he says there are voices now in Moscow who do not believe the Article 5 deterrent still stands. They believe that Donald Trump has undermined it and that he wouldn't come to Europe's aid if Russia attacked a NATO country. Are they right to believe that?
I think this is a lot of bluster, to be honest. Of course, you have to look at what Donald Trump says. You have to take seriously his shaking of the NATO tree. He's encouraging European countries to spend more on defence, and we should spend more on defence. That's one thing that Donald Trump says, which is actually correct, that he has been striving since his first presidency back in 2016 to 2020 to encourage Western European countries in particular to spend more. And it's important that the UK and other European NATO members have the financial spending power to help Ukraine, even without US support. But I think when Russian interviewees say that kind of thing, they're trying to put the wind up us. They're trying to frighten us. And the point here, really, I think, is that Putin hates and fears the idea that Ukraine can defend itself against Russia's invasion. Putin relies on stability and calm in Russia's biggest cities, particularly Moscow and St Petersburg, to maintain his grip on power as he rules Russia in a more and more authoritarian way. And these Ukrainian long-range drone attacks, overwhelmingly nothing to do with the UK, are bringing home the war to Russians. They're damaging the economy, they're damaging Russia's war efforts, and they're resulting in increasing opposition to the war inside Russia. And that's what Putin's most afraid of.
Very interesting. Lee Turner, thank you very much for that. It is a war of attrition at the moment, and officials in Ukraine say at least 17 people were killed